What is up, bodyweight warriors, and welcome back to another video. Today I've got a little bit of a chatty conversational one. I want to discuss a topic which I've had a little bit of beef with for a while now, and has only really come back into the frame since I've been returning back to doing some planche training, and that is the black hole that is the tuck planche. The reason I say black hole is because it's a relatively easy position for people to get into, but then once they get into it, they kind of get sucked into just training that and the progressions around it, and then struggle to escape it and move on to the bigger and better things, such as the ultimate end goal, which would be straddle or full planche. I've certainly been there, definitely spent a long time in the tuck, advanced tuck plays, playing around with it, keeping training it, and just seeing little to no progress. It is frustrating. I want to share with you some reasons why, as well as some alternatives. So let's jump into it. This video is going to be a little bit more conversational, so please feel free to join in with that conversation. Leave your opinion in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear it, and what you found has been helpful for you. So let's start with the issue. Now, the main issue I have with the tuck planche is that it fails to train one of the most important elements of the later stages of the planche, which is the lean. Don't get me wrong, the tuck planche covers a lot of good stuff, and we're going to cover that a little bit later on in today's video in terms of like what it's good for. It's not a complete waste of time. It's just oftentimes people get stuck at this point because, as I said, it ignores that crucial aspect of leaning. And it's weird because this lean obviously is emphasized as an important aspect. You know, the first progression that most people end up doing with the planche will be a planche lean. We're telling people to lean as far forward as you can, understand the shoulder position. And especially if you're tall, like myself, you've got long limbs, that lean is going to be even more important. But then when we shift to tuck planche, we almost take a step back with that focus. The key with planche is essentially that our center of mass needs to sit over the hands. This is why the progression towards a longer body position, such as straddle or full, is harder. It lengthens that lever. It means that we have to shift further forward with our lean to be able to hold that position, to get that center of mass over the hand line. Now, in planche lean as a beginner, this is kind of irrelevant because you're just kind of figuring out the shoulder position. But when we jump to tuck planche, really when we're holding that position, the amount of lean required to get the center of mass over our hands is basically zero. Because we're tucked up, because the lever's so short, we don't need to lean at all, and we can just think about holding that position. Now, this is obviously a beneficial thing because if we're just holding that tuck planche position, we're going to build a lot of awareness of what it feels like to be in that protracted shoulder position. And we're also now going to be able to support our own body weight in that straight arm position. Again, a really important one. And we're going to get some conditioning with wrist and that connective tissue structure through sort of bicep tendon and things as well. So there is a lot of benefits to the tuck planche, don't get me wrong. But if we take a look at the tuck planche versus the straddle planche, then it becomes quite dramatic in terms of the difference in the actual angle that we're training. I think the best example I can give for you, like as an analogy for training towards a certain position, is say we're working towards the 90-degree handstand push-up. But we're only going to work towards that 90-degree handstand push-up by training the handstand push-up. Yes, achieving a handstand push-up is a crucial step on the way to achieving the 90-degree push-up. It's going to provide you the base. It's going to build you a lot of strength that you need to get to that end goal. But it's only ever going to expose ourselves to part of the range of motion. We can train handstand push-up as much as we like, but it's very unlikely, unless we get extremely proficient with handstand push-up, that we're ever going to get a 90-degree push-up from just training that. We're going to need to start incorporating in that larger range of motion, that lean component, that transition, to achieve that move. The same is true for planche. People spend far too long on tuck planche and the advanced tuck planche without progressing any further because they never really dip into that lean component. So I can already feel in the comments that people are going to be saying, well, this is where the progressions come in. This is where you do advanced tuck, you do frog, you do the other progressions, pike straddle, straddle half leg, all that sort of stuff. You build up, you gradually increase that lever. The only issue is that going from a tuck planche to advanced tuck planche, or even really opening up from advanced tuck planche, there isn't really a nice step in between. It's just like kind of easy-ish to almost impossible. There isn't an easy way of bridging that gap. The amount that you need to lean as soon as you start to open those legs up is so dramatically more than what you've done training tuck planche that unless you're particularly gifted with this position, you're gonna have a bad time training it. It's not as simple as the progressions make out, and certainly this is the limitation with these progression models, tuck, advanced tuck, etc. They're good at sort of explaining the basis of it, but in reality, it's not how a training journey is. Our training journey isn't this nice linear pattern. We might dip in and out of these progressions, and a lot of the times, bodyweight training, good programming is about using the right progression at the right time. It doesn't necessarily make sense in that linear process. So what's the solution? That's the hard bit. Ultimately, as I said, I don't think the tuck planche is a waste of time, but I don't think going tuck, advanced tuck frog, etc. I don't think that is the way to progress people. So I'm going to give you my amended progression list for planche. Now, beware, this is kind of generic. It's not always going to be the same for everyone, but hopefully this illustrates kind of my point in terms of what I would emphasize if I was training towards planche. And if you want to follow that journey, I'm going to be building back up to planche after my infraspinatus tear that I had recently in the Road to Planche series, which I've restarted fairly recently. So that's going to be coming in like the next 6 months. So if you aren't already, subscribe, stay tuned for that one. I'll link to the first couple of episodes down below. But otherwise, here is my kind of amended progressions list. Remember though, this is outside of just like basic conditioning. So the ability to do like push-ups, dips, pike push-ups, all that sort of stuff. That base level is going to be important. This is the skill-specific preparation. So first up, we have the Planche Lean. As I said, a fundamental part of the planche. One is going to teach you that shoulder position, that important protracted position, not flexed, protracted, how to brace, how to create that structural strength of the planche position, leaning over the shoulders, locking those shoulders in place. And it's also going to provide some good conditioning for, as I said, the connective tissue. So things like your bicep, tendon, as well as the structure over the forearm, and then also into the wrist, because obviously that leaning far forward position, that's going to put quite a bit of pressure on the wrist. This is a good progression to start with, to understand it. Building up some time, 30-second holds, maybe 40-second holds would be something that would be worth working towards. Progression number 2, I'm going to go with tuck planche. Tuck planche is a good progression, as I said. It kind of is the step on from Planche Lean in the beginning stages, because it takes a lot of the basis that the Planche Lean gives us. So in terms of like understanding shoulder position, building up that straight arm conditioning, takes that and then it just makes the load more. So we're going to be supporting our whole body weight in that tuck planche position. But for me, that should be the focus. The focus should be on like, okay, can I find that shoulder position? Can I get it feeling strong? Can I make sure my arms are locked? Can I get a little bit of that lean? And can I build up some hold time here? Can I get 20 to 30 seconds in tuck planche for a few sets? Once I would hit that point, for me, tuck planche has kind of served its purpose, and then we'd be better on moving on to some other stuff. And for me, that other step would be progression number 3, which would be stalder press or tuck planche press. For me, they're both kind of the same level of difficulty. So really consider the stalder press almost like a mini straddle press, basically. So it's like a shortened version of, as I said, it's about equivalent to doing a tuck planche press, but it's basically a really great way of building up straight arm strength through a very full range of motion. So now I understand that this is kind of reliant on having a decent handstand, which, to be honest with you, if we think about planche, there is an element of balance to being able to do planche. Certainly, working on your handstand isn't going to harm you. Working on your standard straddle press to handstand, which I have a tutorial on, I'll link that down below, and then working towards stalder press, very, very good for building up that strength. The strength is very similar. The shoulder position, everything about it is very similar. If you just want to focus on planche, then really we have like the low planche press. So from like an L sit up to tuck planche. And then we have, you know, you could use like negatives from tuck handstand, lowering down to tuck planche, etc. These would kind of cover you in, for me, the next stage on from tuck planche, which is like, okay, can we take tuck planche and then can we take it to a dynamic movement? Can we build up strength for a full range of motion there? Because ultimately when we train isometrics, we only really get strength through 15 degrees either side of that joint angle. And then also by performing that press, we're also going to have to transition the shoulders through a little bit more lean and slightly different positions than just holding it. Plus, because we have that eccentric component, so that lowering phase, we're going to be stronger in the lowering phase, so we can overload it slightly. We can use a little bit more of an extended position. We can get used to how it feels to start leaning further forward as we lower down, because we're going to be stronger, stronger, stronger. And then as we lower to that parallel position, that's going to be the hardest, the crux, the weakest position, but we can start overloading that lean there. On a personal note, just to explain this a little bit further, I recently worked up to 5 stalder presses. I say recently, like last year sometime, and I didn't do any planche work in between doing this and then going back to planche. And then, you know, I tried my planche again after that, and it was probably the strongest it has been, simply because I built up more capacity in that straight arm pressing. Tuck planche press, stalder press, a good standard to get to. What's next? It goes, do you know what? I would say from here, I would recommend going back to step 1. For me now, Planche Lean becomes an important progression again, but the focus is different. So the focus of the planche press the first time round that we performed it was, okay, let's understand shoulder position. Let's build up some conditioning with the tendons. That's the focus. Now, this second time round, progression number 4, I guess, after the tuck planche, the focus is on like, how much lean can I generate? How far can I lean forward? And number 2 is like, how much weight can I take off the hands? And this is kind of actually, as far as I'm aware, from speaking to coaches, this is how gymnasts train for the planche. The tuck planche wasn't really a progression until Christopher Summer with Gymnastics Bodies came in and kind of made this progression model, which a lot of bodyweight training has been based on, for the general public. And it does work, it's useful. But gymnasts just like got strong with handstand push-up, other stuff, and then they were just basically spotted into straddle planche now. I'm aware, I'm not a gymnastics coach. I haven't been through the gymnastic structure. This is kind of just what I've observed. But this seems to be like how gymnasts scale progressions, is like they just mimic the body position and then they're at a spot. Also, when you do gymnastics, you're just dealing with a different population of people. The people who end up getting to that position are going to be the people who have got through the meat grinder and are in a position where they can learn this. But that's a whole nother story. So basically it's like, how can we create that straddle planche position with a little bit of a spot where the focus is on leaning forward, trying to take weight off the feet? So I think a planche lean is actually a fantastic later stage progression. Once you've got some strength, maybe you're doing your main movement, you're doing tuck planche presses. As an accessory movement, let's chuck in some planche leans. Let's build up more strength in that further lean forward position. I actually even like this as a slight straddle. So we're going to straddle the legs slightly, focus on leaning forward. And like realistically, if we were strong enough to do planche, we could lean forward from this position and the feet would begin to lift. As long as we lock that shoulder position when we had the strength to hold it, and then we could find and shift that center of mass over the hands. It's how some people actually enter the planche. Another kind of option here that I think would sort of sit in the same category would be performing band-assisted holds. I know Fitness FAQs, Dan Vadnal, is a massive fan of band-assisted holds. And again, that for me fits in the same category as like, okay, how do gymnasts train this? They train the position they want to achieve, but they do it with a spot. And the nearest thing we are gonna have to a spot is a band. And it's kind of scalable. We can use a heavier band, then we can use a lighter band, and then we can vary the height at which the band is anchored. So obviously the higher up the band is anchored, the more assistance we're going to get because the more the band is stretched. There's lots of different ways we can scale this. We kind of just got to make do with what we have. And that for me, for most people, should result in somewhere close to achieving the planche. Now there is going to be some individual variance in terms of like some weaknesses and some pitfalls that people need to work on individually. But for the most part, if you can build up to some good level of stalder presses, some tuck planches, you've got that basic level of strength. And then from here, you maintain that, but you start working on the lean aspect. For most people, I think they'll find some good success with planche. And then really kind of at this point, you can start playing around with the more extended positions. So things like, you know, we talked about earlier, planche press negatives. Or you can start doing that with a straddle position, for example. And again, Daniel Vadnal, Fitness FAQs, in his journey and what he's documented, he talked a lot about using that as well. And I think that's a fantastic way to build up strength in that position. It just makes sense. Entering in from handstand is probably one of the easiest ways to then start working more in that leaning position and setting the leaning position. It's very hard to generate that lean from a lower position up because it becomes harder. Top down is definitely the easiest way. So I've tried my best here to advise with people who are stuck on the tuck planche. Basically, start working towards stalder press. That kind of is where I would sit. Whether that involves working towards straddle press to handstand and some other accessory movements, but that's kind of where I would aim for. Of course, though, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I'd kind of want to hear from you. Is there anything that you particularly find helpful or you want to share with people in the comments? Please do so. Leave a comment down below. Just bear in mind that everyone is different, and I think this isn't something you appreciate until you start coaching people. Certainly, like what's worked for you doesn't mean that that is the only way to do it. Which is often what you end up seeing online is like, this is how I did it, therefore everyone should do it this way. And this is the issue, I guess, with the progression model. There is people who are going to have maybe shorter limbs, they're going to have an advantageous position, they're going to be able to learn planche a bit easier. They're going to find that progression model works well for them. But for the people who aren't in that camp, they're going to struggle, myself included. As always, if you want some more structured advice, there is always my app Tribe in there. We've got the skill strength program. So that's a base program designed to help you work on handstand push-up, one-arm chin-up, planche, and front lever, as well as a bunch of other programs for handstands, flexibility, all that sort of good stuff. I'll link that down below, as well as a link to get some more information on a new upcoming project that I'm working on with a couple of other coaches. There's a secret coaching project that is going to be focused specifically on this sort of problem. I'm excited to release that to you. And if you want some updates on that, again, link will be in the description down below. Other than that, please, if you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up button and support the channel. Right next to it is that subscribe button if you want to join the Bodyweight Warrior Tribe. Don't miss out on any more future videos. But other than that, I'll catch you in the next one. Have a strong week and